Welcome back to Still Standing with Diane Six, the podcast for the messy middle, the unexpected chapters, and the moments in life that change you in ways you never saw coming. I'm Diane, and around here we talk about real life, real stories, and what those stories teach us about surviving, rebuilding, and becoming. Sometimes those stories are funny, sometimes they are tender, sometimes they are both. And today's episode is one of those deeper chapters, because this one is about cancer. Not the polished version, not the brave little highlight reel, not the kind that gets wrapped in a pink bow and turns into a slogan. I'm talking about the real thing, the fear, the interruption. And out of nowhere, reality then suddenly makes your whole life feel divided into a before and after. So today I want to talk about one of the chapters I would have never chosen in my life, and one that changed me anyway. There are some moments in life that do not knock politely. They do not arrive with a warning. They don't check your calendar to see if it's convenient. They do not care if you have plans for the month, the year, or even the future version of you that you were quietly building. It just shows up. And when it does, it splits your life. That's what a cancer diagnosis did for me. One moment, you're living inside the ordinary details of your life. The next, you are standing in a reality you did not ask for, trying to understand how your own body has suddenly become the source of fear. And that is such a strange kind of heartbreak, because it's not just the diagnosis itself, it's what comes with it. The language that you never wanted to learn, the appointments that you have to go to, the waiting in the waiting rooms with other people who have breast cancer, and their life, looks just as bad, if not worse, than yours at the moment. The medical words that somehow became part of my life and daily vernacular, and the way everybody suddenly starts looking at you differently. Even the way your own mind starts racing ahead, trying to solve a future that you quite don't understand yet. That's what cancer does. It doesn't just interrupt your schedule, it interrupts your sense of safety. It makes you realize how much of life was built on the quiet assumption that tomorrow would probably look a lot like today. And then suddenly it doesn't. What hit me wasn't only fear, it was the surreal quality of it all. How can life feel so normal and completely altered at the same time? How can the world still be carrying on, people buying coffee, answering emails, making dinner plans, while your own mind is standing still in one impossible moment? The disconnect is wild. It blows my mind. You're still you, and also you're not. Because once you hear news like that, innocence completely leaves the room. You cannot unknow it. You cannot tuck it back into a drawer and go on exactly as before. And then comes the part nobody really even prepares you for, the emotional whiplash. One moment you're strong, the next you're terrified. Another moment you feel practical, the next you're super angry. One moment you're trying to stay positive, and it's kind of hard to do that sometimes. And the next you're wondering why people keep acting like you're supposed to become some glowing poster child for inspirational suffering. And sometimes you don't even feel inspirational. Sometimes you feel tired, scared, annoyed, and deeply unimpressed by the whole entire situation. And sometimes grace looks less like a saintly smile and more like showing up, asking questions, crying in private, and still moving forward anyway. That chapter taught me a lot about resilience, and it's not always pretty. Sometimes resilience looks like breathing through to the next appointment. Sometimes it looks like letting yourself be angry. Sometimes it looks like deciding that even here, in this chapter, that you never wanted, you're still going to try to remain connected to yourself. And maybe that's the part that I actually remember the most. Not about the fear, and not just the diagnosis, but the decision over and over again not to disappear inside of all of it. Because cancer can try to make your whole identity collapse in one word: patient, diagnosis, treatment, risk, recovery. But you are still the person inside that chapter, still a woman trying to figure out how you're going to live day to day with this breast cancer and what it's going to look like after. You're still a soul. You're still someone with humor, complexity, opinions, memories, and definitely a future worth believing in. And that all mattered to me because I didn't want this chapter to become the entire definition of who I was. Yes, it's part of my story, a very powerful part and a painful part, but it's not my whole story. What this chapter taught me is that strength is usually much quieter than people think. Strength is not always being fearless. It's not always being positive, and it's not always having the perfect words or something shining spiritual perspective in the moment. Sometimes strength is simply staying present while your life feels so uncertain. And sometimes strength is even just telling the truth. I remember before I went into surgery, and Sean and I were standing out in the waiting room waiting to be called in. And of course, this is outpatient surgery, this lumpectomy. And I'd been scared, so scared the whole time leading up to this moment. I didn't know what I was getting into, what they would find. There's so many unknowns. And at one moment, Sean and I were standing there, and he was holding me, and I looked up to him and I just said, I'm scared. Sometimes there's strength in just telling the truth. Just saying, this is hard for me, or I'm scared. I did not want this. And yet, I'm still here. Cancer also taught me something I think a lot of hard chapters teach us. You learn very quickly what matters in life. Not a cute quote on a mug kind of way. I don't know how many mugs or things that I got that said, fuck cancer. Yeah, I totally felt that way. But it was all, in a real way. Like, time matters. My peace matters. All these things I was learning. My body matters. The people who show up for you matter. The way you speak to yourself matters. And definitely the way you spend your energy matters. We all know that, right? Where your mind goes, energy flows. So having to stay positive was hard at times. Because when life reminds you that it's fragile, clarity gets sharper. And maybe most of all, this chapter taught me that my body is just not something we live in. It is part of my story. It's part of how I care for it, how I listen to it, how I forgive when I'm angry at it, and how we come back into a relationship with ourselves after this fear. That's deep work. And oh my gosh, that matters so much. So, what does this mean for you, right? I'm always looking for lesson learned, trying to give back, help people that are going through something that I've been through that could maybe, if there's one little nugget in here somehow, that will help you. Maybe your chapter is cancer, but maybe it isn't. Maybe your diagnosis has a different name. Maybe your life split came through some type of grief, divorce, burnout, could be betrayal, or some kind of other moment that made your future feel suddenly unfamiliar. But the lesson still holds. When your life changes in a way you never would have chosen, it is so easy to believe that everything has been taken from you. Your confidence, your ease, any plans that you made, certainly your old identity, that's gone, and your sense of normal. And yeah, something has changed, and it's real, but not everything is gone. You are still there, under the fear, the numerous appointments, the chaos, and under the chapter title you never wanted. You are still there, and that matters, because hard seasons have a way of convincing us that we are only what happens to us. Think about that. But you are not just what happened to you, you are also the one living through it. That does not erase the pain, it gives the pain context. And for anyone listening who is in a medical chapter, a survival chapter, or a body betrayal chapter right now, I want to say this clearly. You do not have to perform strength to be strong. You do not have to inspire everyone else while your heart is trying to catch up. And you do not have to make this pretty to make it meaningful. Sometimes the holiest thing you can do is stay honest and stay true to yourself. So here's a reflection question. What part of you is still here, even after the chapter that tried to change everything? Not what was taken, not what got interrupted, and not what no longer looks like the way it used to. What in you has remained? What in you is still wise, still worthy, still alive and becoming? Sit with that. Because sometimes healing begins when we stop asking only, what did that take from me? And start asking, what in me is still standing? Thank you for being here with me for episode 3 of Still Standing with Diane Six. Gosh, this was a tender one, but maybe that's the point. Some chapters deserve softness. Some stories deserve honesty. And some seasons in life remind us that being alive is far more layered than most people ever say out loud. And if you're walking through a chapter that feels uncertain, maybe frightening, or nothing like the life you thought you'd be living, I want to remind you of this. You're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to be changed. And you are still allowed to believe that there is more life ahead of you. Until next time, life splits and you can still stand. Looking for more support? My books, courses, meditations, and Still Standing membership are all designed to help you navigate life's unexpected chapters with honesty, reflection, and real support. You will find all of that there, plus tons of freebies at stepintomyshoeshere.com.